You throw one more drink and I swear to God I'll drag you out of this restaurant myself. Marcus grabbed the wine bottle out of Amelia Carter's hand before she could pour another. His own boss, the CEO, the most powerful woman in the building, and 40 people watched a nobody from the logistics floor do the one thing nobody in Atlanta had ever dared to do. Give it back, Mr. Reed. Her voice shook. Give it back right now or you're fired. Then fire me, Marcus said, and set the bottle on the floor behind him. But you're done for tonight. That was the moment everything changed, because 8 hours later, that same CEO who threatened to end his career would wake up with her head resting on his chest, gripping his shirt like he was the only solid thing left in her world. Before we go on, comment below and tell me what city you're watching from tonight. I want to see how far this story travels. And if you still believe one good man can change everything, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button, because that's exactly what this story is about. Now let's go back to how it started. Nobody in that restaurant had expected the evening to fall apart the way it did. 2 hours earlier, everything had been perfect. The private dining room on the top floor of the Peachtree Grand Hotel glittered with the kind of success that most of them had only dreamed about when they first joined the company. They had just closed the biggest deal in the firm's 20-year history, a $40 million contract that would carry them for years. Amelia Carter had signed it herself, and when she walked into that room, the entire team stood up and applauded. Marcus Reed clapped along with the rest of them, standing near the back where he always stood. 52 years old, well 35. But some nights he felt like 52, and he had learned a long time ago that the back of the room was a good place for a man like him. You could see everything from back there. You noticed things other people missed. And what he noticed that night was this. Amelia Carter was smiling in a way he had never seen before. "To the best team in Atlanta," she said, raising her glass. Her voice carried the way it always did, strong and certain, filling the room without effort. "You earned this, every single one of you. Tonight dinner is on me, drinks are on me, and if anybody wakes up tomorrow with a headache, that's on you." Laughter rolled through the room. People loved her when she was like this. They just didn't get to see it often. Marcus had worked under Amelia Carter for 4 years, and in all that time, he had counted maybe a dozen occasions when she let the wall down even an inch. She was a plus-size woman in a world that judged women twice, once for being a woman, and again for taking up more space than that world thought a woman should. She had built her company from nothing, and she had done it by being harder, sharper, and more prepared than anyone who tried to knock her down. "She never blinks," his coworker Danielle had told him once back when Marcus first started. "I've been in meetings where grown men cried, and Amelia Carter didn't blink. Don't ever try to charm her. She's seen every trick there is." But that night, sitting 3 tables away, Marcus watched her laugh at something one of the junior analysts said, and he thought, there she is. There's the person underneath all of it. I didn't say anything. He never did. Marcus wasn't the kind of man who pushed himself forward. He'd learned to keep quiet the hard way. 3 years earlier, his wife Sarah had died a car accident on I-285, a rainy Tuesday. A phone call that split his life into a before and an after. One minute he was a husband and a father, and the next he was a single dad holding a 5-year-old girl who kept asking when mommy was coming home. I didn't have an answer for that. He still didn't some nights. So Marcus did the only thing he knew how to do. He got up every morning, he made his daughter breakfast, he took her to school, he went to work, he came home, and he did it all over again. He didn't drink much, he didn't date. He poured everything he had into that little girl and into the job that kept a roof over her head, and he told himself that was enough. "You should come out more," Danielle said to him that night, sliding into the empty chair beside him. "You always leave early, every time." "My daughter," Marcus said. "The sitters got her tonight, but I don't like to push it." "Emma, right. How old now?" 8. Marcus smiled, the real kind of smile that only came when he talked about her. 8 going on 40. She corrected my grammar this morning. Told me I used less when I should have used fewer. Danielle laughed. "She's gonna run this company someday. God help this company." They both laughed at that, and for a moment, Marcus felt something loosen in his chest. It was a good night. A good, ordinary human night, the kind he hadn't had in a long time. Then Amelia's phone rang. Marcus wouldn't have thought anything of it. The woman got 100 calls a day, except that he happened to be looking at her when it happened. He saw her glance down at the screen. He saw the way her whole body changed. She stood up, smoothed her dress, and walked toward the tall windows at the far end of the room, phone pressed to her ear. Her back was straight. Her chin was up. But Marcus had spent 3 years learning what grief looked like from the inside, and he knew the shape of it when he saw it in someone else. "You okay?" Danielle asked, following his gaze. "What's she looking at?" "I don't know," Marcus said quietly. "But whatever it is, it's bad." The call lasted 4 minutes. Marcus counted, though he didn't mean to. When Amelia turned back around, the smile was gone. In its place was something Marcus recognized, that flat, careful expression people wear when they've decided they will not cry in public no matter what. He'd worn it himself at Sarah's funeral. He'd worn it at the grocery store the first time a stranger asked him where his wife was. Amelia walked back to the head of the table, sat down, and reached for the bottle of wine. Nobody else noticed. The party was too loud, too happy, too caught up in itself. But Marcus watched her fill her glass to the brim, drink half of it in one long swallow, and fill it again. "Another toast," she called out, and her voice was almost right. Almost. "To the man of the hour. Where's Kevin? Kevin, stand up. You closed that account. Take a bow." The room cheered. Kevin stood red-faced and grinning. Amelia drank. Over the next hour, Marcus watched a woman he had always thought of as unbreakable begin very quietly to break. She laughed too loud at jokes that weren't funny. She poured drink after drink. She told a story about her early days sleeping in her car, eating ramen, getting a loan denied by 9 banks before the 10th said yes. And there was something raw in it, something too honest for a celebration. "You know what they told me," she said, and the table leaned in, because when Amelia Carter told a story, you listened. "The 10th bank, the loan officer. He said, 'Ms. Carter, I'm going to be straight with you. I don't think you look the part. But your numbers are the best I've seen all year, and I'm tired of pretending numbers lie.'" She laughed, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I don't think I look the part. 20 years I've been proving that man wrong. 20 years. The table was quiet now. Somebody said, "You've proved everybody wrong, Amelia." "Have I?" she said, and she reached for the bottle again. That was when Marcus stood up. I didn't have a plan. He wasn't the kind of man who planned these things. He just found that he couldn't sit there and watch it anymore. He crossed the room slowly, casually, like a man going to refill his own glass. When he reached the head of the table, he pulled out the chair beside Amelia and sat down, an act of quiet audacity that in 4 years he had never once dared. Amelia turned to look at him, and for a moment there was a flash of the old fire in her eyes. "Mr. Reed," she said, "to what do I owe the honor?" "Just wanted to say congratulations," Marcus said. "On the deal. That was a hell of a thing you pulled off." She swirled her wine. "You've been with the company, what, 3 years?" Four. She studied him like she was seeing him for the first time. "Operations. You run the logistics floor." "That's right. You never talk in meetings." Marcus almost smiled. "Not much worth saying most of the time. I figure the people who talk the most usually understand the least." Amelia's eyebrows lifted just slightly. "That's a dangerous thing to say to a woman who talks a lot." "You're the exception, ma'am." "Ma'am?" she snorted. "God, I hate that word. Makes me feel 100 years old." "Force of habit," Marcus said. "My mother raised me right. She'd smack me on the back of the head if I called a woman anything else." For the first time all night, something almost genuine crossed Amelia's face. "Smart woman, your mother." "Smartest I ever knew." They sat in silence for a moment. The party rolled on around them. And then Amelia did something Marcus didn't expect. She set down her glass and looked at him with those tired, knowing eyes, and said very quietly, "You saw, didn't you? The phone call. You've been watching me for the last hour like a man watching a house catch fire." Marcus didn't lie. He'd never been any good at it. "I saw." "And what did you see, Mr. Reed?" I saw a woman who got some bad news, Marcus said carefully, and decided she was going to drink it away before she let anybody find out. Amelia was quiet for a long time. Around them, someone started singing. Glasses clinked. The night went on being a celebration for everyone except the woman it was supposed to celebrate. "His name is Daniel," she said finally so softly that Marcus had to lean in to hear her. "We were engaged 4 years ago. He said he couldn't do it. Couldn't be married to a woman who worked 80 hours a week, couldn't handle being Mr. Amelia Carter, as he put it." She laughed bitter and low. "That was the call. He's getting married, some yoga instructor half his age. They want me to hear it from him before I see it on Instagram. Wasn't that thoughtful of him?" "I'm sorry," Marcus said, and he meant it. "Don't be," Amelia said. "I got the company. He got whatever he got. It's a fair trade." She reached for the wine again, and this time her hand was shaking. "It's a fair trade." "Ms. Carter." "Amelia." "Amelia." Marcus reached out and gently moved the bottle just out of her reach. It was the boldest thing he'd done in years. "I think maybe you've had enough for tonight." The whole room seemed to hold its breath, the ones who were watching anyway. Nobody moved a wine bottle away from Amelia Carter. Nobody told her enough. People had been fired for less. Amelia stared at his hand on the bottle. Then she stared at him. And that was the moment it all came apart. "Say that again," she said. For a second, Marcus thought she was talking to him. But she wasn't looking at him anymore. She was looking past him toward the entrance of the private room, where a man in an expensive gray suit had just walked in. Marcus turned. The man was tall, tan, the kind of good-looking that came from money and gym memberships, and never once in his life being told no. He was smiling an easy, careless smile, and beside him stood a young woman in a white dress, her arm looped through his. "Amelia," the man said, spreading his hands. "I heard your team was celebrating up here. Congratulations on the deal, truly. I wanted to introduce you before you heard it secondhand. This is Brittany. We're—" "Get out," Amelia said. The man blinked. "Amelia, come on. We're both adults. You thought you'd walk into my party," Amelia said, rising slowly to her feet. "On the biggest night of my career, to show me your new fiancé." Her voice was climbing now, and the whole room had gone silent, and Marcus felt something in his gut twist, because he knew where this was going. "You thought that would be thoughtful." "I called you, I told you." "Say that again," Amelia said. "Say it to my face, Daniel. Tell me you're marrying her." Daniel's smile finally faltered. "Amelia, please, don't make a scene." And that was when Amelia Carter, CEO, self-made unbreakable, picked up her wine glass and threw it against the marble floor at his feet. The glass shattered. Red wine splashed across his $1,000 shoes. The young woman gasped. Somewhere near the back, someone dropped a fork. "There's your scene," Amelia said. Her voice cracked on the last word. "Now get out of my restaurant." Nobody moved. 40 employees stood frozen, watching their invincible boss come apart in front of them. And Marcus watched the realization hit Amelia. A half-second later, the realization of what she'd just done, of who had just seen it, of how many phones might already be out. Her face went white. Her hand came up to her mouth. And for one terrible moment, Marcus saw a woman who had spent 20 years never once letting anyone see her weak, standing in the wreckage of the worst possible moment, to finally break. "Amelia," Daniel started, "you're clearly not. That's enough." The voice was Marcus's. He hadn't decided to speak. It just came out of him low and flat and hard, the voice he used when Emma had a nightmare. The voice that said, "I've got this, now you can stop." He stepped between Amelia and the man in the gray suit. "You said what you came to say," Marcus told him. "You got your look. Now do the decent thing for once in your life and walk out that door." Daniel looked him up and down, the off-the-rack suit, the tired eyes, the man who was so clearly not important, and something ugly flickered across his face. "And who the hell are you?" "Nobody," Marcus said. "I'm nobody. I just work here. But I'm the nobody who's asking you to leave, and I'd rather ask you nice." For a long moment, the two men stood there. And whatever Daniel saw in Marcus's face, The stillness of a man who had already survived the worst thing that could happen to him. A man who had nothing left to be afraid of. It made him take a step back. "Fine," Daniel said. "Fine. This is—" He grabbed the young woman's arm. "We're leaving. Congratulations again, Amelia. Truly." And they were gone. The room stayed silent for 3 long seconds after the door closed. Then mercifully someone, Danielle, God bless her, clapped her hands and called out, "All right, folks, party's not over. Bartender, another round on the house, courtesy of the best boss in Atlanta." The noise came rushing back. People turned to each other, talking fast, pretending they hadn't seen what they'd all just seen. The music came back up. The celebration stitched itself back together the way parties always do, because nobody wants to be the one still staring. But Amelia wasn't part of it anymore. She had sat back down hard, and she was staring at the shattered glass on the floor as if she couldn't quite believe she'd been the one to throw it. Her hands were folded in her lap. Her shoulders, which she held so straight, so proud, were beginning to fold inward. Marcus crouched down beside her chair so that he was at her eye level, not standing over her, never standing over her. "Hey," he said quietly. "Amelia, look at me." She didn't. Everyone saw that. "Some people saw a man walk in and act like a fool," Marcus said. "That's what they saw. That's the story that gets told tomorrow. I threw a glass at my ex-fiancé in front of my entire company." Her voice was hollow. 20 years. 20 years I've never once, and I threw a glass." "You're human," Marcus said. "Turns out even you. Who knew?" She let out a sound that was half a laugh and half something breaking. Don't be kind to me right now. I can't." She pressed the back of her hand to her mouth. "If you're kind to me right now, I'm going to fall apart, and I have already fallen apart enough for one night." Marcus understood that. God, did he understand that? He remembered the well-meaning people at the funeral, the casseroles, the hands on his shoulder, the "if there's anything I can do," and how every kind word had felt like a finger pressing on a bruise. Kindness, when you're barely holding on, is the most dangerous thing in the world. So he didn't say anything kind. He said practically, "How much did you drink tonight?" Amelia blinked. "What? How much? Roughly. I'm not judging. I'm doing math." "I don't a bottle more. I stopped counting after Daniel." She frowned. "Why?" "Because you're the CEO," Marcus said. "And in about 10 minutes, half these people are going to want to come say goodnight to you and shake your hand and tell you what a great night it was. And you are in no condition to do that right now. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to go get your coat. I'm going to bring the car around. And I'm going to get you out of here before anyone else gets a chance to see anything they shouldn't. That work for you?" Amelia stared at him. And Marcus watched something shift behind her eyes. Surprise, maybe. Or relief. Or the simple dizzying strangeness of someone taking care of her for the first time in longer than she could remember. "Why?" she said. "Why would you do that? You barely know me." Marcus thought about it. He always thought about things before he said them. "Because a while back," he said, "I went through the worst night of my life in front of a whole lot of people. And there was one guy, a friend of mine, Tom, who didn't say a word. He just grabbed my keys, put me in his truck and drove me home. Didn't try to fix it, didn't try to talk about it. Just got me out of there." Marcus stood up. "I never forgot that. Been waiting a long time to pass it on, I guess." He didn't wait for her to answer. He went to get her coat. Getting Amelia Carter out of that restaurant without a scene turned out to be its own small miracle. She could walk barely, but she leaned on Marcus's arm more than she probably wanted to, and twice she stopped and swayed and had to steady herself. Marcus kept his body between her and the room, kept his pace slow and easy, kept up a low murmur of nothing in particular, so that from a distance it looked like nothing more than an employee walking his boss to the elevator. "Almost there," he said. "You're doing fine. Just keep walking." "I'm not drunk," Amelia informed him with the exaggerated dignity of someone who was extremely drunk. "No, ma'am." "I'm tired. There's a difference." "There sure is," Marcus agreed and pressed the elevator button. Danielle caught his eye across the room as the doors opened. She gave him a small nod, a "you got her" nod. Marcus nodded back. Danielle understood. Some people just understood. The elevator doors closed. Amelia leaned back against the mirrored wall and shut her eyes. "You're going to lose your job over this," she said. "Come again. Tomorrow, when I'm sober and horrified. I'm going to want to pretend this never happened, and you're going to be the one person who saw all of it, and that makes you a liability." She opened one eye. "That's how it works. The person who sees you at your worst, you can never look at them the same way again." Marcus considered that. "You could fire me, I guess," he said. "That's your right. But I'd think about it first if I were you." "Why?" "Because tomorrow, you're going to want at least one person in that building who knows what actually happened tonight," Marcus said. "One person who saw the whole thing and didn't run to tell everyone. That's not a liability, Amelia. That's the most valuable thing you've got." The elevator dinged. "Watch your step." She stared at him the whole way down to the lobby. Outside, the Atlanta night was warm and thick with the smell of coming rain. Marcus had valet bring the car. Amelia's car, a black Mercedes that probably cost more than his house, and he helped her into the passenger seat, buckled her belt, and walked around to the driver's side. "You don't have your car," Amelia said as he got in. "I took a ride share here," Marcus said. "Figured I'd be drinking. I wasn't, as it turns out, but that's how I figured it." "So how are you getting home?" "I'll figure it out. Where do you live?" Amelia gave him an address in Buckhead, one of those neighborhoods where the houses had names and the driveways had gates. Marcus put it in the GPS and pulled out into traffic. For a few minutes, they drove in silence. The city slid by, wet and glittering, and Marcus kept his eyes on the road and his hands at 10 and 2, and he let the quiet do its work. Some conversations only happen in the dark of a moving car. He knew that. He'd had a few of them himself. "Can I ask you something?" Amelia said finally. "Sure. Your wife." She said it carefully. "You said the worst night of your life. You said a friend drove you home. What happened?" "If it's you, don't have to." Marcus was quiet for a moment. He didn't talk about Sarah much. It was easier not to. But something about the dark and the rain starting to speckle the windshield, and this broken woman beside him, who had just shattered her own careful world into pieces, something made him want to. "Car accident," he said. 3 years ago. I-285 coming home from her sister's place. Rain like tonight. A truck came across the median." He kept his voice even. He'd learned to keep it even. "I got the call at 10:40 at night. I'd just put our daughter to bed. Emma was 5. Amelia had gone very still. "Marcus, I'm so sorry." "The worst night," Marcus said, "wasn't the accident. The accident was over before I even knew it happened. The worst night was 3 days later. The wake. Standing there in a rented suit, shaking hands with 200 people and every single one of them looking at me like I was going to break." He flicked the wipers on. "That's the night Tom drove me home. Because I was about to break right there in front of everybody, and he could see it, and he got me out." "And you never forgot it," Amelia said softly. "I never forgot it." The rain came down harder. The GPS said they were 12 minutes out. "You know what nobody tells you," Marcus said, "about losing somebody. Everybody thinks the hard part is the grief. And the grief is hard, don't get me wrong. But the hardest part is that you have to keep going anyway. You've got a 5-year-old who needs breakfast. You've got a job. You've got a mortgage. The world doesn't stop just because yours did. So you get up and you pretend you're okay, and you do it every single day, and after a while, the pretending gets so good that people forget you're pretending." He glanced at her. "Sound familiar?" Amelia turned to look out the window. For a long moment she didn't say anything. And then, so quietly, he almost missed it. She said, "Every day, every single day." They were maybe 8 minutes from her house when Amelia started to cry. It came on quiet at first, just her breathing, changing, just her shoulders beginning to shake. Marcus didn't say anything. He didn't reach over and pat her hand or tell her it was going to be okay. He just kept driving, kept his eyes on the road, and gave her the one thing he'd learned people needed most in those moments: The freedom to fall apart without an audience judging it. I'm sorry, Amelia managed. God, I'm so sorry. I'm your boss. You shouldn't be seeing this. You don't have a boss in this car, Marcus said. It's just two people driving home in the rain. That made her cry harder. I built all of it, she said, and the words came pouring out now, the way they do when a dam finally goes. The company, the house, the whole everything. I built it because I was going to prove them wrong. All of them, every teacher who said I wasn't leadership material. Every man who looked at me and decided I was less my own mother, who told me I should focus on losing weight instead of my grades because no man wants... She stopped, wiped her face with the back of her hand. And I did it. I proved every one of them wrong. And I got to the top, and I looked around and there was nobody. There's nobody up there, Marcus. It's just me. It's just me and the view, and a whole lot of people who work for me, and not one single person I can call at 11 o'clock at night just to say I'm scared. Marcus let that sit in the car for a moment. Daniel was supposed to be that person, he said. Daniel was supposed to be that person, Amelia agreed, her voice raw. And he left because I was too much. Too big, too loud, too busy, too much. And tonight he walked in with his little yoga instructor to make sure I knew that somebody somewhere thought I was just enough. Just the right amount. Everything I'm not. She laughed, and it turned into a sob. And the worst part? The worst part is, some stupid, pathetic part of me still wanted him to look at me and change his mind. That's not pathetic, Marcus said. It's incredibly pathetic. It's human, Marcus said. There's a difference. And you'd know that if you ever cut yourself half the slack, you cut everybody else. Amelia turned and looked at him, then really looked at him, tears still on her face in the blue light of the dashboard. Why are you being so kind to me? I told you, I'm passing it on. No. She shook her head slowly. No, it's more than that. You could have passed it on by putting me in a cab. You didn't have to sit here and see me. Nobody sees me, Marcus. That's the whole point of being who I am. Nobody gets to see me. Marcus thought about how to answer that. The GPS said 4 minutes. Can I tell you what I see? He said. Yeah, I see a woman, Marcus said slowly, who has been carrying the whole world on her back for 20 years and never once got to set it down. Not once. Not even for a minute. And I think tonight that fool in the gray suit didn't break you. I think he just knocked the world off your back for a second, and you got to feel how heavy it's been all this time. And that's not weakness, Amelia. That's the opposite. You've been strong so long you forgot what it costs. Amelia Carter put her face in her hands and wept. And Marcus Reed, who did not know it yet, was about to make a decision that would change both of their lives forever. Because when they pulled up to the gate of her house, that beautiful, enormous, dark, empty house, Amelia looked at it, and something in her face just died. I don't want to go in there, she whispered. Amelia, there's nothing in there. Do you understand? It's 4,000 square feet of nothing. I'm going to walk in, and I'm going to be alone, and I've had too much to drink, and I've had the worst night of my life, and I'm going to sit in that house by myself, and I don't... Her voice broke completely. I don't think I can do it tonight. I can't do the empty house tonight. I just can't. Marcus put the car in park. The rain drummed on the roof. He should take her inside. That was the smart thing, the safe thing, the professional thing. Walk her to the door. Make sure she got in drive. The Mercedes back to the office. Take a ride-share home, and never speak of this night again. That was what a sensible man would do. But Marcus kept thinking about a 5-year-old asking when Mommy was coming home. He kept thinking about empty houses and how well he knew them, and how there had been so many nights when he would have given anything for one single person to say, you don't have to be alone tonight. I've got a spare room, Marcus heard himself say. It's nothing fancy. It's a regular little house in a regular little neighborhood, and my 8-year-old drew all over the walls of it 2 years ago, and I never painted over it. But there's a bed, and it's clean, and there's a lock on the door, and my daughter's asleep down the hall, so you don't have to worry about anything. You'd be safe, and you wouldn't be alone. He looked at her. It's up to you. I can take you inside right now, no questions. Or I can take you to my place, and tomorrow I'll drive you back to your car, and this is just a thing that two decent people did on a bad night. Your call. Completely your call." Amelia stared at him for a long, long moment. And here is the thing about Amelia Carter, that not one person in that company knew she had not slept a full night through in 4 years. Not since Daniel left. She lay awake in that big empty house night after night, running numbers and reading emails and doing anything to keep from noticing how quiet it was. "Your daughter's really asleep down the hall," she said. "Dead to the world. She sleeps like her mother did. You could march a brass band through her room and she wouldn't stir. And there's a lock on the door." "There's a lock on the door." Amelia closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were wet again, but something in her face had eased just a fraction. Just enough. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay. Take me to your place, please." Marcus put the car in drive. "You're going to be all right," he said. "I promise you, you're going to be all right." He didn't know yet how true that would turn out to be. He only knew that some nights you don't get to plan. You just get to decide what kind of man you're going to be when it counts. And Marcus Reed had made his decision a long time ago on the worst night of his life in the passenger seat of an old friend's truck. He drove them home through the rain. The house was dark when Marcus pulled into the driveway, except for the porch light he always left on for the babysitter. He killed the engine, and the rain kept falling on the roof of the Mercedes, and for a second, neither of them moved. Amelia stared at the little house through the windshield, like she'd never seen a house that small in her life. Maybe she hadn't. Not up close anyway. "This is it," Marcus said. "Home sweet home. It's not much." "It's got a porch light," Amelia said quietly. "It's got a porch light. My house has motion sensors and a security company in Ohio that watches a camera feed." She laughed, but it came out wet and broken. "You've got a porch light. I think you win." Marcus came around and opened her door, and she took his arm again, steadier now than she'd been at the restaurant, but not by much. The rain soaked through both their coats in the 10 steps to the porch, and Amelia stumbled once on the single step up, and Marcus caught her elbow without a word, and held on until she found her feet. "Sorry," she whispered. "Stop apologizing," Marcus said. "You've said sorry about 40 times since we left. You've got nothing to be sorry for. I threw a wine glass at a man in front of my entire company." "Yeah, well." Marcus dug his key out of his pocket. He had it coming. Watch the mat it slides. He opened the door, and the warmth of the house came out to meet them. That particular warmth of a place where a child lives, a smell of crayons and laundry, and something that might have been cinnamon. Amelia stepped inside and stopped dead in the little entryway, and Marcus watched her face do something complicated. The babysitter, a college kid named Rachel, who lived 2 doors down, came around the corner from the living room with her earbuds in. She took one look at Marcus, then at the woman on his arm, and her eyes went wide. "Oh," Rachel said. Hi, Mr. Reed. I didn't know you were bringing." "Rachel, this is a friend from work. She wasn't feeling well, so I'm letting her rest here tonight. How was Emma?" "Good, she was good. She went down at 8:30, no problems." Rachel was still staring at Amelia, and Marcus could see the girl trying to place her, because Amelia Carter's face had been in the Atlanta Business Journal 3 times that year. "She wanted to wait up for you, but I told her it was a school night." "You did right. Thank you, Rachel. Let me get you home. It's coming down out there." "I can walk. It's like 40 feet. I'll watch you from the door. Go on." The girl gathered her things and slipped out, and Marcus stood in the doorway until he saw her porch light 2 houses down flick on and her front door close. Then he shut his own door and turned the deadbolt, and the sound of it seemed very loud in the quiet house. Amelia hadn't moved from the entryway. She was looking at the refrigerator. It was covered in drawings. Every square inch of it held on with a mismatched collection of magnets, crayon suns, and stick figure families, and a lopsided dog that could have been any animal at all. And in the center at a child's eye level, a drawing of a man and a little girl holding hands under a rainbow, and above them in careful wobbling letters, "Me and Daddy." "She did those," Amelia said. It wasn't a question. "Every one of them. She's got a whole gallery going. I keep meaning to rotate some out, but I can't ever bring myself to take one down." Marcus hung his wet coat on a hook by the door. "Let me get you a dry shirt and some water. You want anything to eat? I've got about half a frozen pizza and a lot of goldfish crackers. That's the honest inventory. Amelia didn't answer. She was still looking at the refrigerator, and when Marcus stepped closer, he saw that her eyes had filled up again. "Hey," he said. "You okay?" That word. She pointed at the drawing. At the word daddy. When was the last time you think anybody drew a picture just because they loved somebody just for no reason? No deal attached. No angle. She wiped her face. I can't remember the last time somebody did something for me that didn't have an angle. You just met one tonight, Marcus said. Guy in the gray suit had a real bad angle. I don't have one. Sit down before you fall down. I'll get the water. He steered her to the couch, an old brown thing with a blanket thrown over the back that Emma had picked out because it had foxes on it, and Amelia sank into it and put her head back and closed her eyes. Marcus went to the kitchen and filled a big glass with water and got 2 aspirin from the cabinet and came back and put them on the coffee table in front of her. Drink the whole glass, he said. All of it. You'll thank me at 6 a.m. Take the aspirin too. You've done this before. I've been the one who needed it done before. Same thing other end. He sat down in the armchair across from her, not next to her, keeping the whole coffee table between them, and she noticed that he could tell. She noticed that the deliberate distance of a man being careful. There's a bathroom down the hall first door. Spare room is the second door. It's got a lock like I told you. I'll get you a t-shirt to sleep in. My stuff will be big on you, but it's clean. Marcus? Yeah. Why aren't you sitting next to me? He held her gaze. Because you've had a lot to drink, he said, and you've had the worst night of your life, and you're a beautiful woman sitting on my couch, and I want you to know for a fact, no doubt about it, that nothing is going to happen tonight that you don't want stone cold sober tomorrow. So I'm sitting over here, that's why. The room went quiet. Somewhere down the hall, a clock ticked. Amelia looked at him for a long moment, and something moved across her face that Marcus couldn't read. And then she picked up the water glass and drank half of it down in one go. You said beautiful, she said, setting the glass down. I did. People don't say that to me. They say powerful, impressive, formidable. One reporter called me a force of nature, which I think was supposed to be a compliment. She laughed softly. Nobody says beautiful. My own fiancé stopped saying it about a year before he left. Then your fiancé needed glasses, Marcus said, on top of everything else that was wrong with him. She laughed for real that time, and it surprised her. He could see it. Surprise her. Her hand coming up to her mouth like she'd forgotten the sound she made. And Marcus felt something warm move through his chest that he hadn't felt in 3 years, and he stood up fast because he did not trust it. Let me get that shirt, he said, and went down the hall. He stood in his bedroom for a second longer than he needed to, one hand on the dresser breathing. What are you doing? He asked himself. What in God's name do you think you're doing, Marcus Reed? She's your boss. She's drunk. She's grieving. And you're standing in your bedroom with your heart going like a teenager's over a woman who is going to wake up tomorrow and remember she owns the company that signs your paycheck. He pulled out the biggest, softest t-shirt he owned. A faded gray one from a 10K he'd run with Sarah a lifetime ago, and he brought it back down the hall and handed it to Amelia without meeting her eyes. Bathroom's the first door, he said. Take your time. She took the shirt. Their fingers touched for half a second, and both of them pretended they didn't. She got up steadier now and went down the hall, and Marcus heard the bathroom door close and the water run. And he sat back down in the armchair and put his face in his hands and told himself to get it together. When she came back, she was wearing his shirt, and she'd washed the makeup off her face, and without it, she looked younger and softer and about 1,000 times more real. The shirt hung to her knees. She'd folded her expensive dress over her arm like she didn't know what to do with it, and Marcus took it from her and hung it carefully over the back of a kitchen chair. You didn't have to do that, she said. It's a nice dress. Shame to let it wrinkle. He gestured at the couch. Sit. You want the room now, or you want to talk a minute? No wrong answer. It's whatever you need. Amelia sat. She pulled the fox blanket down off the back of the couch and wrapped it around her shoulders, and she looked so out of place and so completely at home at the same time that Marcus had to look away. I don't want to sleep yet, she said. If I sleep, then it's tomorrow. and tomorrow I have to be Amelia Carter again." She pulled the blanket tighter. "Right now, I don't have to be anybody. This is the first time and I genuinely can't tell you how long that I'm just a person sitting on a couch. Can I just be a person for a little while longer?" Marcus nodded slowly. "You can be a person as long as you want," he said. "I'm in no hurry." And so they talked. They talked for a long time, longer than Marcus meant to, the two of them on opposite sides of a coffee table in a small warm house while the rain came down outside. Amelia asked about Emma, and Marcus told her about how she'd been born 6 weeks early and fit in his 2 hands, about how she'd stopped talking for 3 months after Sarah died, and how the first full sentence she'd said again was, "I want pancakes," and how he'd cried in the kitchen making them. He told her things he'd never told anybody at the office. Things he never told anybody at all, because it was easier in the dark with a woman who was never supposed to be here anyway. "You raised her alone," Amelia said. "Completely alone." "My mom helps when she can. She's up in Marietta. But mostly, yeah, it's me and Emma." "You never, I mean. 3 years. You never wanted to date." Marcus shook his head. "I tried a couple times early on. My sister set me up. It felt like I don't know how to say it. It felt like I was cheating on somebody, except the person I'd be cheating on wasn't there anymore. And that's a special kind of crazy that's hard to explain to a nice woman across a dinner table." He turned the water glass in his hands. "And then it just got to be simpler not to. Emma needs me. The job needs me. There's not a lot of Marcus left over at the end of the day, and it didn't seem fair to hand somebody the leftovers." "That's the loneliest thing I've ever heard," Amelia said. "And I'm the loneliest person I know." "Then I guess we're a matched set." She smiled at that sad and small, and then her smile faded, and she looked down at her hands. "Can I tell you something I've never told anyone?" she said. "You can tell me anything. It stays in this room. That's a promise." Amelia was quiet for a moment, gathering herself, and when she spoke, her voice was different, lower, stripped of all the armor he'd heard in every meeting for 4 years. "6 months ago," she said, "I sat in my car in the parking garage under the building for 2 hours after everyone left, in the dark. Because I couldn't think of a single reason to drive home, and I couldn't think of a single reason to stay, and I just sat there. And at some point, I realized I was hoping something would happen. A heart attack. An accident. Something that would just take the decision out of my hands." She looked up at him, and her eyes were dry now, which was somehow worse. "I've never said that out loud. I've never told my therapist. I've never told anyone. I don't know why I'm telling you." Marcus set the glass down very carefully. He didn't panic, and he didn't gasp, and he didn't do any of the things people did that made you feel like a monster for having said it out loud. He'd learned in his own dark years exactly how much a person could be pushed away by the wrong reaction to a true thing. "Thank you for telling me," he said quietly. "That took a lot." "You're not going to say anything. I'm going to say I'm glad nothing happened in that garage. I'm real glad. Because I only met the real you about 4 hours ago, and I already think the world's a better place with her in it." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "And I'm going to say that a person who sits alone in the dark, hoping to disappear, isn't weak or broken or any of the things you're scared she is. She's just tired. Bone tired. The kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix because it's not your body that's tired, it's your whole life. I know that tired. I've lived in that tired." He paused. "You're not alone in it. That's all I've got. I'm sorry it's not more." Amelia's face crumpled, and she pressed the fox blanket to her mouth, and she cried, not the loud crying from the car, but a deep, quiet, shaking cry, the kind that comes from a place a person keeps locked all the time. Marcus started to get up to come to her, and then he stopped himself and stayed where he was because he'd promised her distance, and he'd meant it. "You can come sit over here," Amelia said through the blanket. "I'm not going to bite you, Marcus. I don't want to be alone on this couch. Please." He came around the coffee table and sat down beside her close, but not touching, and after a moment, she leaned her head onto his shoulder, and he sat very still and let her. She smelled like his own soap now, which did something strange to his chest, and her hair was damp against his neck, and Marcus Reed sat in his own living room at 1 o'clock in the morning, holding the weight of a woman he'd been terrified of for 4 years, and he thought, I am in so much trouble. Tell me about your wife, Amelia said. The good stuff, not the accident. Tell me who she was. And so he did. He told her about Sarah, how she laughed too loud in quiet places, how she couldn't cook to save her life, and burned water, and was proud of it. How she'd proposed to him instead of the other way around, because she said he was taking too long. He talked, and Amelia listened, her head on his shoulder, and somewhere in the middle of a story about Sarah dancing in the kitchen, Marcus felt her breathing change. She'd fallen asleep. Just like that mid-sentence, the way a person does when they've been running on empty for years and finally feel safe enough to stop. Her head slid from his shoulder down to his chest as she settled, and one hand came up and gripped a fistful of his shirt, the way Emma used to hold on when she was little and scared of the thunder. Marcus went very still. He should move her. That was the thing to do. Wake her gently, walk her to the spare room, put her behind the locked door where he'd promised she'd be safe, and go to bed alone like a decent man. He knew that. He told himself that. But she was sleeping. Actually sleeping deep and slack and peaceful, and there was something on her face he hadn't seen there all night. Something that looked almost like the person she might have been before the world got its hands on her. And he remembered what she'd said in the car, that she hadn't slept a full night in 4 years, and he thought about waking her, and he could not do it. I'll just wait until she's deeper, he told himself. Then I'll move her. He reached over, careful as anything, and turned off the lamp. The house went dark, except for the porch light glowing through the curtains. The rain kept falling, and Marcus Reed sat on his old brown couch with his boss asleep against his chest. One hand fisted in his shirt, and he did not move her, and he did not move himself. And after a while, his own eyes grew heavy, and he told himself, just a few more minutes, just until she's deeper. And somewhere in the middle of that thought, he fell asleep too. He didn't hear the small footsteps in the hallway. It was almost 3 in the morning when Emma Reed woke up thirsty and padded out of her room in her pajamas to get a glass of water. She stopped at the edge of the living room, rubbing her eyes, and she saw her father asleep on the couch. And she saw the lady. Emma was 8 years old, and she was smart. Smarter than most grown-ups gave her credit for, and she stood there in the dark for a long moment, looking at the strange woman sleeping with her head on her daddy's chest. She did not wake them. Instead, she did something that told you everything you needed to know about how Marcus had raised her. She went to the hall closet, and she got down the extra blanket, the heavy one they used in winter, standing on her tiptoes to reach it. And she came back, and very carefully, very quietly, she spread it over the 2 sleeping grown-ups, tucking it around the lady's feet, where they'd come uncovered, the way her daddy always tucked her in. Then she stood back and looked at them for a while. Emma didn't know who the lady was, but she knew her daddy's face, and she had not seen it look like that, soft and easy, not tight around the eyes, the way it always was, not carrying something heavy, the way it always was, in a very long time. She barely remembered it looking like that at all. She got her water. And on her way back to bed, she stopped and looked at them one more time, and in the smallest whisper, so quiet that neither of them stirred, she said, "Don't leave, okay?" She wasn't sure who she was saying it to. Maybe the lady, maybe her daddy, maybe just the feeling in the room. Then she went back to bed and fell asleep, and she slept better than she had in weeks. Morning came gray and clean, the rain gone, the light coming pale through the curtains. Marcus surfaced slowly the way he always did, that half-second of peace before the day's weight came back down on him, and then he became aware of 2 things at once. The first was that there was a weight on his chest. The second was that there was a blanket over him, that he did not remember, a blanket he knew very well, the heavy winter one from the hall closet. He opened his eyes. Amelia Carter was asleep against his chest, her hand still gripping his shirt, her face inches from his own, and tucked around them both, tucked with the clumsy, careful love of a child, was Emma's blanket. Marcus lay very still and did the math, and his stomach dropped. Emma had seen. Sometime in the night his daughter had come out and seen this, and instead of waking him, she had covered them up. And he did not know what that meant, what she'd thought, what she'd feel about it, whether he'd have to explain something to an 8-year-old that he couldn't even explain to himself. And that was the exact moment Amelia woke up. He felt it happen, felt the change in her breathing, felt her body go from slack to tense in the space of a single heartbeat. Her eyes opened, and Marcus watched up close in real time, the precise instant that Amelia Carter remembered who she was and where she was and whose chest her head was resting on. She went rigid. "Oh my God," she breathed. "Amelia, oh my God, oh no, what did—" She sat up so fast, the room must have spun, one hand going to her head, her eyes wide and horrified, taking in the couch, the blanket, the t-shirt she was wearing, his shirt fisted in her other hand, which she now released like it had burned her. "What happened? What did we— Marcus, what did we do?" "Nothing," Marcus said, sitting up slow, keeping his voice level and calm and steady. The voice for nightmares. "Amelia, look at me. Nothing happened. I promise you. On my daughter's life, I promise you nothing happened. You fell asleep talking, on the couch, right there where you're sitting. That's the whole story." But she wasn't hearing him. She was staring at the second blanket, now the heavy one, and Marcus watched her put it together. Watched the horror deepen. "Where did this blanket come from? This isn't the one I—" Her head snapped up and down the hall toward the closed door of a child's bedroom, and the color drained clean out of her face. "Your daughter. Oh my God, Marcus, your daughter your little girl saw me, saw us sleeping like she covered us up. Amelia was on her feet now, backing away from the couch, one hand pressed flat against her chest, like she couldn't breathe. "What have I done? I'm your boss. I came into your home and I slept on you, and your 8-year-old daughter found us. What is she going to think? What is she going to— I have to go. I have to go right now." She started looking around wildly for her dress, her shoes, her phone, her armor, anything to put back on, and Marcus stood up too slow, hands open the way you'd approach something spooked. "Amelia, stop. Just stop for 1 second and breathe. I can't be here." Her hands were shaking. She couldn't get her own dress off the back of the chair, the zipper caught. "Do you understand what this is? Do you understand what happens if anyone? I run a company. Marcus, I have a board. I have a reputation. I spent 20 years building, and I got drunk and cried on an employee, and slept on his couch, and his baby found us, and if this ever—" The dress slipped out of her hands entirely, and she made a sound that was almost a sob. "God, God, what is wrong with me? What is wrong with me?" "Nothing's wrong with you." Marcus didn't move any closer. He just stood there, steady as a post, and let her come apart against the wall of his calm. "You're scared. You woke up in a strange place, and you got scared, and that's the most normal thing in the world. And I need you to hear me say one thing before you run out that door, and then if you still want to go, I'll drive you myself, and I'll never say a word about any of it. Okay, can you give me one thing?" Amelia stopped. She was breathing hard, pressed against the wall, and her eyes were full and furious and terrified all at once. But she stopped. "One thing," she said. "You didn't do anything wrong last night." Marcus said it slow and clear, so there was no room for her to hear it any other way. "Not one single thing. You had bad news, and you had too much to drink, and a decent thing happened where a person made sure you got somewhere safe, and then you were so tired and so safe that your body finally let you sleep for the first time in years. That's not a scandal, Amelia. That's not something to be ashamed of. That's just a human being who's been carrying too much for too long, finally setting it down for one night. And there's not a person alive who'd hold that against you. Least of all me." Amelia's face was working, fighting itself 20 years of never let them see against the plain sound of somebody telling her the truth. "And the blanket," Marcus went on, quieter now. "The one my daughter put over us. You want to know what that means? I'll tell you what that means. It means my 8-year-old walked out here, saw her exhausted daddy asleep, and a sad lady asleep next to him. And her first thought, her very first thought at 3 in the morning, was that we might be cold. That's it. That's the whole thing. There's no judgment in that little girl. She doesn't know you're a CEO. She doesn't know about boards or reputations. She just knew somebody looked cold, and she loves people because I have done my level best to raise her to love people. So before you run out that door hating yourself, I need you to know that the only thing that happened in this house last night was kindness. Start to finish. Nothing but kindness." The silence stretched out. And Amelia Carter, who had walked out of 100 boardrooms without a hair out of place, who had stared down loan officers and lawyers, and men who wanted her to fail, slid slowly down the wall until she was sitting on the floor of Marcus Reed's living room in his old gray t-shirt and put her face in her hands and stopped fighting it. "Nobody's ever talked to me like that," she said, muffled, wrecked. "In my whole life, nobody has ever once talked to me like that." Marcus crossed the room and crouched down in front of her, not touching, just there at her level, the way he'd learned to be with Emma when the world got too big. "Well," he said gently, "get used to it, because I don't know any other way to talk." And it was right then, with Amelia's tear-streaked face coming up out of her hands to look at him, right then, in that fragile, cracked-open moment, that a small voice spoke from the hallway. "Daddy!" Both of their heads turned. Emma was standing in the hall in her pajamas, her hair a mess, holding the stuffed rabbit she'd had since she was 2. She was looking at the strange lady sitting on the floor of her living room, wearing her daddy's shirt. And then she was looking at her daddy crouched down in front of the lady, and her small face was doing something careful and thoughtful, working out a problem the way she worked out everything. Marcus's heart stopped clean in his chest. Here it was. Whatever his daughter said next in the next 3 seconds was going to set the tone for everything that came after, and he had no idea what it was going to be, and there was nothing on earth he could do to steer it. Emma looked at Amelia for a long, long moment. Then she walked across the room right up to the crying stranger on the floor and held out her stuffed rabbit. "This is Beans," Emma said seriously. "When I'm sad, I hold him and it helps. You can hold him if you want, but I need him back before school." And Amelia Carter, CEO, self-made, unbreakable, the woman who 6 months ago had sat alone in a dark garage, hoping to disappear, took the worn little rabbit from the child's hands and held it against her chest, and looked up at Marcus with an expression he would remember for the rest of his life. For a moment, nobody in that living room said anything at all. Amelia held the little rabbit against her chest and looked at the child who'd given it to her. And Marcus watched something happen in his boss's face that he didn't have a word for. It was like watching ice come apart in the spring. 20 years of holding herself together, and it took an 8-year-old with a stuffed rabbit to finish what a whole terrible night had started. "Thank you," Amelia said to Emma, and her voice barely worked. "That's thank you. I'll take real good care of him, I promise." Emma studied her with that serious, careful look. "Why are you crying? Did you have a bad dream?" "Something like that," Amelia said. "My daddy holds me when I have bad dreams. He rubs my back and he sings the dumb song." Emma turned to Marcus, matter of fact as anything. "Daddy, did you sing her the dumb song?" Marcus let out a breath that was almost a laugh. "No, baby, I did not sing her the dumb song." "You should. It works even for grown-ups, probably." She turned back to Amelia and stuck out her hand formal as a tiny businesswoman. "I'm Emma. I'm 8. What's your name?" And Amelia, who was introduced by a title in every room she walked into, who hadn't been just a name to anybody in years, took the small hand in hers and shook it. "I'm Amelia," she said. "Just Amelia." "That's pretty. Do you like pancakes?" "Daddy makes pancakes on days when nobody has to rush." Emma looked hopefully at her father. "Is today a pancake day? We have a guest." Marcus looked at his daughter, and then at the woman on his living room floor, wearing his shirt and holding his kid's rabbit, and he made a decision that a smarter, more careful man would not have made. "Yeah," he said. "Today's a pancake day. Go wash your hands and your face and brush your teeth all the way in the back. I'm gonna check." Emma cheered and ran down the hall, and the second her door closed, the spell broke, and Amelia was scrambling to her feet again. "I can't stay for pancakes, Marcus. I have to. It's a work day. I have a 9 o'clock, I have." She stopped, her hand going to her mouth. "Oh God, it's a work day. What time is it? I have a 9 o'clock with the whole executive team, and I look like this, and I'm at an employee's house, and half those people were at the restaurant last night. They saw everything." "It's 6:40, Marcus said, checking the clock on the stove. "You've got time. Your car's at the office. I'll drive you. You can be home in Buckhead by 7:15, showered and changed, and looking like the boss by 8:30 easy. Breathe." "I can't just walk in there like nothing happened." "Then don't walk in like nothing happened." Marcus started pulling things out of the cabinet flower, the big bowl, moving easy and calm, because he knew that calm was contagious, and she needed some. Walk in like the CEO. You had a height. You got some bad personal news, you left early. You're back. You've got a company to run. You don't owe anybody an explanation, Amelia. You're the one they explain themselves to. They saw me throw a glass. They saw a man ambush you at a party to flaunt his new girlfriend, and they saw you have a human reaction, and then they saw you leave with your head up. He cracked an egg one-handed into the bowl. You want to know what people are actually saying this morning? I'll tell you exactly what they're saying because I've worked in that building 4 years, and I know how the floor talks. They're saying, "Did you see what Daniel did? What a piece of work." Poor Amelia. That's it. That's the story. The villain of last night is not you. It's the guy in the gray suit. But it only stays that way if you walk in there at 8:30 like you own the place, because you do. Amelia stood in the middle of his kitchen and stared at him, and slowly, he watched her spine come back. He watched her reassemble herself piece by piece, the way she must have done 1,000 mornings. Except this time, somebody was watching this time. Somebody had handed her the pieces. "When did you get so smart about people?" she said. "Grief," Marcus said, simply stirring. "You want to understand, human beings go through something that makes every single one of them not know what to say to you. You learn real fast who people are when they're uncomfortable." He poured a circle of batter onto the hot griddle. "Sit down. Eat one pancake. One. You've got a 9 o'clock, but you can spare 6 minutes for one pancake, and I promise you'll run that meeting better with something in your stomach than you will running on wine and no sleep." She sat down. She ate the pancake, and that was the thing that undid her more than anything else. Not the terror of being caught, not the shame, but sitting at a scarred wooden table in a small warm kitchen at 6:45 in the morning, eating a pancake a man had made her without being asked, while a little girl hummed a tuneless song down the hall. Amelia put her fork down halfway through and pressed her napkin to her eyes, and Marcus at the stove had the grace to keep his back turned and pretend he didn't see. "It's a good pancake," she said thickly. "It's an okay pancake. Emma likes them with too much syrup. Don't tell the dentist." Emma came back in teeth, brushed, face washed, and climbed into her chair, and for 20 minutes the three of them ate pancakes together like it was the most ordinary thing in the world. Emma did most of the talking. She told Amelia about her class hamster Nugget and about how Kayla P was not her friend anymore, but Kayla M still was, and about how she was going to be a marine biologist and also possibly a veterinarian and also the president. Amelia listened to all of it like it was a board presentation, asking real questions. And Emma bloomed under the attention of a grown-up who actually listened, and Marcus stood at the counter with his coffee and watched the two of them and felt something in his chest that scared him half to death. Because he could get used to this. That was the danger. He could get used to this so fast it would break him when it ended. And it was going to end. He knew that. In 40 minutes, he was going to drive Amelia Carter back to her real life, and she was going to put on a $2,000 suit and become the most powerful woman in the building again. And he was going to go back to the logistics floor, and last night was going to become a thing that never got mentioned, a secret they both carried, and that was the best possible outcome. That was the good ending. He needed to remember that. At 7:15, he loaded Emma into the car to drop her at his mother's on the way. His mom did the school run 3 days a week, and Amelia sat in the back seat next to the little girl still in Marcus's shirt, with her dress in a bag on her lap, and Emma held her hand the whole way, and didn't seem to think it was strange at all. "Bye, Amelia," Emma said when they pulled up to her grandma's. "You forgot beans." She dug the rabbit out and pressed it back into Amelia's hands. "You keep him one more day, but then I need him. I'll tell Daddy to get him back." "I'll take good care of him," Amelia promised. Marcus watched his mother's face in the doorway as Emma ran up, watched her clock. The woman in the back seat watched a whole conversation happen in his mother's raised eyebrows that he was absolutely not going to have. He waved mouthed thank you and drove off before she could come down the steps. The car was quiet for a while after that. Amelia held the rabbit in her lap and looked out the window at Atlanta waking up. "You have a good life, Marcus," she said finally. "You know that you don't have money, you don't have a title, and you have the best life of anybody I've ever met." I've got a mortgage and a leaky roof and a kid who's gonna need braces I can't quite figure out how to pay for, Marcus said. But yeah, on the stuff that counts I do all right. How much are the braces? Amelia. I'm asking a question, and I'm not answering it because I know where it's going, and you are not paying for my kid's teeth. He said it easy, but there was iron under it, and she heard the iron. You want to do something for me? Walk into that 9 o'clock like a queen. That's what you can do for me. That's the only thing I want. She was quiet a moment. You're a proud man. I'm a broke man with his pride. It's about all I've got left in the win column, so I hang on to it. That got a small laugh out of her, and then the laugh faded, and something more serious came into her face, and Marcus felt the temperature in the car change, and knew a hard conversation was coming. What is this? Amelia said quietly. What happened last night? What is it, Marcus? I need to know before we get to the office because in about 11 minutes, I have to know how to look at you across a conference table. Marcus kept his eyes on the road. He'd been dreading this question and hoping for it in equal measure. I think, he said slowly, it's two people who were both alone finding out they didn't have to be. For one night. I think it's the nicest thing that's happened to me in 3 years, and I think it can't happen again, and I think we both know that. Why can't it happen again? The question landed harder than she probably meant it to, and Marcus's hands tightened on the wheel. Because you signed my paycheck, he said. Because you've got a board and a reputation and a company that depends on you. And I've got a kid who depends on me. And the second anybody in that building thinks you and I are whatever, it's over for both of us. You become the woman who and I become the guy who. And it doesn't matter that last night was the most decent thing either of us has done in years. It'd get turned into something ugly by lunch. You know that better than I do. He took a breath. So no, it can't happen again. And that's not me not wanting it to. Understand the difference. That's me wanting it to and knowing better. The silence in the car was thick enough to lean on. Say that last part again, Amelia said. Amelia. The part about wanting it to. Her voice was very quiet. Say it again. Marcus pulled up to a red light and finally looked at her. And there it was, out in the open between them. The thing they'd both been pretending was just kindness, and just grief, and just a bad night. And for one long moment at that red light, he let her see it, all of it. Everything he'd been shoving down since she laughed at his mother's joke the night before. I want it to, he said. God help me, Amelia. I have wanted it to since about 1 o'clock this morning, and it scares me more than anything scared me since the night I got the phone call. Because I know what it's like to lose the thing you love, and I swore I'd never let myself be in a position to feel that again, and here I am, 10 hours after meeting the real you, already terrified of losing something I don't even have. The light turned green. He looked back at the road. But wanting a thing and doing a thing aren't the same. I've got Emma. You've got the company. And some things you just don't get to have no matter how bad you want them. I made peace with that a long time ago. Amelia didn't say anything for the rest of the drive. She held the rabbit and looked out the window, and when Marcus pulled into the parking garage under the building, the same garage, he realized with a jolt where she'd once sat in the dark, hoping to disappear. She put her hand on the door handle and then stopped. I need to fix my situation before I go up, she said. Her voice had changed. The softness was folding away, and he could hear the CEO coming back into it, and it hurt more than he expected. I'll get my car, drive home, shower, change. I'll be up by 8:30. She paused. Thank you, Marcus, for all of it. I mean that in a way I don't have words for. You don't have to thank me. I do, actually. That's part of what's wrong with my whole life, that I've forgotten how to thank people and mean it. She opened the door, then stopped again halfway out her back to him. It didn't happen again because you're right. That's the only reason. I want you to know that too. It's not because I don't. She stopped. It's because you're right. And she got out and shut the door and walked to her car without looking back. And Marcus sat in the parking garage and watched her go and felt like something was being taken out of his chest with a spoon. Then he went up to the logistics floor and clocked in and tried to become an ordinary man again. It lasted about 4 hours. At 1:15 that afternoon, Danielle appeared at his desk with a look on her face that Marcus didn't like at all. "Okay," she said quietly, pulling a chair over. "You need to hear this from a friend, and not from the grapevine, because the grapevine is on fire." Marcus's stomach dropped. "What?" "So, last night, you and Amelia, you left together." She held up a hand. I know it was nothing. I saw you. I know you were just getting her out of there. You're a Boy Scout. I get it. But somebody else saw you leave together too, and somebody's got a mouth. And the story going around this building right now is not the story that actually happened." She winced. "It's a much better story, if you know what I mean." The floor seemed to tilt under Marcus's feet. "What are they saying?" "They're saying you and the CEO have been carrying on for months, and last night you finally didn't care who saw. They're saying that's why she blew up at Daniel. Jealousy on both sides. They're saying—" Danielle lowered her voice even further. "Kevin from accounts is saying he saw you drive off in her Mercedes at 11 o'clock at night and that you didn't come back for it, which that part's true, so it's giving the whole thing legs. Marcus, half the building thinks you're sleeping with the boss." Marcus felt the blood leave his face. This was it. This was the exact thing he'd told her in the car, the ugly thing by lunchtime. Except it was worse, because it wasn't even about him. It was about her. About a woman who'd spent 20 years being told she wasn't leadership material, now getting whispered about as the boss who slept with the help. "That's not," he started. "I know it's not," Danielle said. "I was there. But it doesn't matter what's true. It matters what's spreading, and this is spreading like nobody's business. And here's the part I really need you to brace for." She glanced over her shoulder. "It's already up the chain. Diane from HR was in the break room 20 minutes ago, and she got real quiet when I walked in. And you know what that means." Marcus knew exactly what that meant. At 2 o'clock his desk phone rang. It was HR. They wanted to see him. 4th floor, as soon as possible. He walked to the elevator like a man walking to his own execution, and the whole way up, all he could think about was Emma. Emma's braces. Emma's school, the mortgage. The fact that a single father with a gap in his employment history in this economy was a single father in serious trouble. He'd made peace with never having Amelia. He had not made peace with losing his job over a night where the only thing that had happened was a child putting a blanket over 2 sleeping adults. The HR office was on the 4th floor, and when Marcus walked in, Diane from HR was there, and a lawyer he didn't recognize was there, and Amelia was there. She was standing by the window in a charcoal suit, back to the CEO, hair-perfect face, perfect every inch, the woman the whole building was afraid of. And when she turned around to look at him, there was nothing in her face at all. Nothing. Not one flicker of the woman who'd cried on his couch and held his daughter's rabbit and eaten his pancakes 10 hours ago. It was like looking at a stranger who happened to have her face. "Mr. Reed," she said, "sit down." And Marcus understood with a cold, sick certainty what was happening. She was doing exactly what she'd warned him she'd do the very first night in the elevator. The person who sees you at your worst, you can never look at them the same way again. He was the liability now. He was the loose end. And she was going to cut him off to save herself. And the worst part, the part that made him want to laugh out loud right there in the HR office, was that he understood it. He'd have done the same thing to protect Emma. He couldn't even hate her for it. He sat down. "There's a rumor circulating in this company." Amelia said, her voice flat and full. "Regarding the two of us. I'm sure you've heard it. Diane has heard it. Legal has heard it. It concerns the events of last night, and it is doing damage to this company's culture, to my position, and to yours." She folded her hands. "So I've called this meeting to address it directly. On the record, with witnesses." Here it comes, Marcus thought. Here it comes. He kept his face still. He'd learned to keep his face still at a funeral. He could do it here. "Diane," Amelia said, "would you read back what Mr. Reed's personnel file says? His performance reviews, all 4 years." Diane blinked clearly, not expecting that. She shuffled some papers. Mr. Reed, Senior Operations Manager, 4 years. Every review exceeds expectations. 3 commendations for process improvements that saved the company a documented $1.2 million over 3 years. Never a single complaint, HR incident, or disciplinary note. Perfect attendance except for, she paused, 3 days of bereavement leave 4 years ago. The room was quiet. Now, Amelia said, and her voice did something then, a small crack in the flat professional surface. I want everyone in this room to understand something, and I want it on the record, because I am told there is a version of last night going around this building, and I intend to kill it right now permanently with the truth. She looked directly at Marcus, and finally the stranger's mask slipped just a little. Last night I received the worst personal news I've had in years at a company event in front of my staff. I had far too much to drink. I was by any honest measure a danger to myself. And one person in that room, one noticed, and instead of taking a photo or telling a story or turning it into gossip, he quietly made sure I got home safe, put me somewhere I would not be alone, and did not for 1 single second cross any line a decent man wouldn't cross. Her voice was shaking now just slightly, and she didn't stop it. His 8-year-old daughter put a blanket over me while I slept. That is the entire scandal. That is the whole ugly secret this building is whispering about. A little girl covered up a sad stranger so she wouldn't be cold. Nobody in the room moved. So here is what is going to happen. Amelia went on, and the CEO steel came back into her spine, and now it was aimed outward at the whole building, not at him. Diane, effective immediately. I want a company-wide reminder about the policy on spreading unverified personal rumors about colleagues, and I want it understood that the next person who repeats this particular story will be disciplined for it. Legal. I want it documented that Mr. Reed conducted himself with complete professionalism, and that any suggestion otherwise is false and originates in gossip, not fact. And Mr. Reed. She turned to him fully now. I owe you an apology in front of witnesses, because you did the single kindest thing anyone has done for me in a very long time, and this company repaid you by dragging your name through the mud for it. That is not acceptable to me, and I am going to fix it. Marcus sat there stunned. Everything he'd braced for turned completely inside out. He'd walked in, expecting to be fired to protect her, and instead, she was standing in front of a lawyer and an HR director, staking her own reputation to protect his. You didn't have to do that, he managed. You just made yourself the center of it. You could have let it blow over quiet. No, Amelia said. I couldn't have. Because letting it blow over quiet means letting people believe you're the kind of man who'd take advantage of a drunk woman, and you are the exact opposite of that. And I have spent my whole career watching good things get destroyed by people too cowardly to stand up and say the truth out loud. She lifted her chin. I'm done being that kind of coward, starting today. And in the silence that followed, Diane from HR, who had worked at that company for 11 years and had never once seen the CEO look at anyone the way she was looking at Marcus Reed right now, quietly picked up her papers and cleared her throat and thought to herself that the rumor had it wrong in the details, but it might not have it wrong about everything. Because you didn't stake your whole reputation on protecting somebody's good name over a single night that meant nothing. You did it over a night that meant everything. The rumor died within a week the way rumors do when the boss makes it clear she'll fire the next person who repeats it. But something else took its place, something quieter and harder to kill, and it started with the way people watched Marcus Reed walk across the parking lot. Because Amelia Carter did not go back to being a stranger to him. That was the thing nobody expected, least of all Marcus. He'd figured that after the HR meeting she'd put the wall back up, that she'd have to. That the smart play was distance and cold professionalism, and letting the whole thing fade into a story neither of them ever told. And for about 3 days, that's what he expected to happen. He kept his head down on the logistics floor and did his job, and told himself the pancakes and the rabbit and the woman crying on his couch were all filed away. Now a closed chapter, a night that meant everything and could never mean anything again. Then, on the 4th day, a little after noon, his desk phone rang. Mr. Reed. Her voice formal, but with something underneath it he could hear now that he knew how to listen. Do you have lunch plans? I've got a sad little sandwich in the break room fridge. Leave it there. My office. 10 minutes. Bring the sandwich if you're attached to it. but I'm having something better sent up, and we have things to discuss about the Northeast distribution numbers." A pause. "That's the reason, in case anyone asks. The distribution numbers." "Understood," Marcus said, and hung up and sat there for a second with his heart going. Because there was nothing wrong with the Northeast distribution numbers. He knew that. She knew that. And they were both going to pretend out loud, for the benefit of a whole building, that a CEO calling a logistics manager up to her office for lunch was about spreadsheets. That was how it started. Not with romance, not with some grand declaration, but with a series of lunches that were officially about distribution numbers and inventory forecasts and a warehouse consolidation project that Amelia invented specifically, so she'd have a reason to talk to him 3 times a week without anybody's eyebrows going up. And in those lunches behind the closed door of the corner office 40 floors up over Atlanta, 2 people who'd promised each other nothing could happen slowly, carefully against all their own better judgment, became something. They talked about the warehouse project, and then they talked about Emma, and then they talked about everything. Amelia found herself telling him things in the middle of a workday that she'd never told her own therapist. Marcus found himself looking forward to Tuesdays and Thursdays in a way that scared him, and every single time at the end of the hour they'd both stand up and straighten their clothes and become boss and employee again, and Amelia would say something loud about the distribution numbers for the benefit of her assistant outside, and Marcus would walk back to the elevator feeling like a man carrying a secret that was growing too big for his chest. "This is insane," he told her one Thursday about 3 weeks in. "You know that, right? We keep saying nothing can happen, and then we do this." "Nothing is happening," Amelia said. "We're eating salads and discussing logistics." "Amelia, I know." She set down her fork. "I know. Marcus, I know. I think about it every single day. I've run the numbers 100 times, and they never come out any better. If this becomes real and it gets out, and it would get out, these things always get out. I'm the CEO who slept with an employee, and every single thing I've built gets a asterisk next to it. 20 years of proving I earned my chair, and one relationship turns me into a cliché." She rubbed her temples. "And you become the man who slept his way off the logistics floor, and you'd hate that, and you'd be right to hate it, because it's not true, and it never could be undone. So we stop," Marcus said. "It came out rough. So we stop." Amelia agreed, and neither of them moved to stop. The twist that broke it open came from a direction neither of them saw. It was a Saturday, and Marcus had Emma at the Little League fields on the north side, because Emma had decided at 8 that she was going to be a baseball player, in addition to a marine biologist, and a veterinarian and the president. I was sitting on the aluminum bleachers with a paper cup of bad coffee, watching his daughter strike out with tremendous enthusiasm, when a shadow fell across him and a voice said, "Is this seat taken?" He looked up, and it was Amelia. She was in jeans. He'd never once seen her in jeans. Jeans and a plain sweater and no makeup, and her hair pulled back, and for a second he didn't recognize the CEO at all, because this wasn't the CEO. This was just a woman at a Little League game holding 2 hot dogs. "How did you?" Marcus started. "You mentioned last Tuesday that Emma had a game on the north side this weekend. It wasn't hard." She sat down next to him and held out a hot dog, and there was something almost shy in it, something he'd never seen in her. "I didn't know if I should come. I sat in the parking lot for 10 minutes deciding. I'm still not sure I should have. But I'm so tired, Marcus, of only being allowed to see you in a room with the door closed, pretending it's about warehouses." Marcus took the hot dog. His hand wasn't quite steady. "Amelia, if somebody from work sees us at a children's baseball game on a Saturday, 2 coworkers happen to run into each other at a public park." She shrugged, but he could see it cost her, could see the fear under the casual. "I decided I'm allowed to have a life outside that building. I decided that this morning, actually standing in my closet, and it was the first decision in years I made because I wanted to, instead of because it was strategic." She looked out at the field where Emma was now playing an intense and mostly imaginary game in right field. "She's got a hell of an arm. She's got a hell of an imagination. That's about it so far." But Marcus was smiling. "You really sat in the parking lot for 10 minutes. "I really did. I do that a lot, it turns out. Sit in parking lots deciding whether I'm allowed to want things. She took a breath. I'm tired of it. That's the honest truth of why I'm here. And that was the afternoon. Everything changed because halfway through the fourth inning, Emma spotted them from right field and completely abandoned her position to come running full speed across the grass, glove flying off shouting, "Amelia, Amelia, you came!" and threw herself into the CEO's arms like they'd known each other for years. Amelia caught her, held her, and over the top of the little girl's head, she looked at Marcus with an expression that wasn't strategic at all, that had nothing calculated in it, that was just naked and terrified and hopeful all at once. And Marcus knew right then that the thing they'd both sworn couldn't happen had already happened weeks ago, and they'd just been too scared to say it out loud. "You still have beans," Emma said accusingly, pulling back. "You said one more day, and it's been like 100 days." "I know." Amelia dug in her bag, and there was the rabbit a little worse for wear. "I'm sorry, Emma. I've been carrying him around. He actually helped a lot. On some hard nights. I hope that's okay." Emma took the rabbit, considered this seriously, and then made a decision that only an 8-year-old could make. "You can keep him," she said. "I have another one at home for emergencies. Beans likes you, he told me." She looked at her father. "Daddy, can Amelia come get ice cream after? You always say ice cream if I get a hit, and I didn't get a hit, but I ran really fast that one time." "That's not the deal, baby, the deal is. Please." Marcus looked at his daughter and at the woman holding his daughter's rabbit and gave up entirely. They got ice cream, and that was the day it stopped being lunches about warehouses and started being real, because there was no pretending a Saturday afternoon of Little League and ice cream cones and Emma insisting on sitting between them was about distribution numbers. That was just a family. Anybody looking at them would have seen a family. And the terrifying, wonderful truth was that all three of them wanted it to be one. For a few weeks, they lived in a bubble. Careful, quiet, hidden dinners at Marcus's little house with the curtains closed. Amelia learning how to help Emma with fractions, Saturday games, Sunday pancakes. Amelia, who had a 4,000-square-foot house in Buckhead with a security company in Ohio, watching an empty camera feed, started spending more nights on a fox's blanket, on a brown couch, in a small house in a regular neighborhood. And she told Marcus, it was the first time in years she slept through the night every night without fail. "You're going to give up the mansion for a couch?" Marcus teased her one night doing dishes while she dried. "I'd give up the mansion for the porch light," Amelia said, and she wasn't teasing at all, and Marcus had to put down the plate he was holding. But bubbles break. They always break. And theirs broke on a Monday morning 3 weeks into the ice cream, and the fractions, and the sleeping through the night, when Amelia walked into her office and found a man sitting in her chair. His name was Gerald Voss, and he was the chairman of her board. "Amelia," Gerald said, not getting up from her chair, which told her everything about how the conversation was going to go. "Sit down. We need to talk about a personnel matter." "Well, 2 personnel matters. You and a man named Marcus Reed." And Amelia Carter, who had built this entire company with her own 2 hands, stood in the doorway of her own office and felt the floor drop out from under her 20 years of work. She kept her face still. She'd learned that from a single dad. She realized in the space of one strange thought, she'd learned to keep her face still at a funeral she'd never attended. "I don't know what you think you know, Gerald," she said, "but I'd choose your next words very carefully. I know that you've been having a company logistics manager sent up to your office for private lunches 3 times a week for over a month." Gerald slid a folder across the desk. "I know you were photographed at a children's baseball game with the same man and his child looking very much not like coworkers. I know he drove you home in your own car the night of the Meridian celebration and didn't return for hours." He steepled his fingers. "And I know that you of all people understand exactly how this looks and exactly what it does to the acquisition that half this board has spent 8 months trying to close. Blue Water doesn't buy companies with unstable leadership, Amelia. And a CEO tangled up with a subordinate is the textbook definition of unstable leadership. The acquisition. Blue Water. Marcus didn't even know about the acquisition. Almost nobody did. It was need to know. It was the deal that would let a dozen early investors finally cash out, that would secure the retirements of people who'd bet on her 20 years ago when nobody else would. $400 million. and it lived or died on Amelia Carter, looking like a stable, bulletproof, above-reproach chief executive. "How long have you known?" she said quietly. "Long enough. It doesn't matter how. What matters is what you do about it in the next 48 hours. Gerald finally stood up, buttoning his jacket. "Here's where the board is, and I'm telling you this as the one person on that board who actually likes you. This gets handled clean, and it gets handled now. The man is transferred out a different building, a different city ideally, or terminated with a package quietly. You issue a statement that there was never any relationship, just a professional mentorship that people misread. And you never see him again. Not the man, not the kid, none of it." He picked up his coat. "Do that, and the acquisition closes, and everyone you've been carrying for 20 years gets their payday, and this is a footnote. Nobody remembers. Don't do that." He paused at the door, "And the board removes you as CEO for conduct. The deal collapses, and every person who trusted you loses everything, including you." He put his hand on her shoulder, almost gently. "I'm sorry, I truly am. But you know I'm right. You've always been the smartest person in every room. Be the smartest person in this one." And then he was gone, and Amelia Carter was alone in her own office, with the worst choice of her life, sitting on the desk in a manila folder. She didn't call Marcus that day, or the next. That was the part that told him something was wrong before he knew what it was. 2 days of nothing. No lunch invitation, no text, no anything. Emma asked about her twice at dinner. "Is Amelia coming Saturday?" Why hasn't Amelia texted back? And Marcus made excuses. He didn't believe himself. And on the third day, a Wednesday at 4 in the afternoon, his desk phone rang, and it was her assistant, not her. And the message was cold and formal and final. "Ms. Carter would like to see you in the 4th floor conference room at 5 o'clock. HR will be present." Marcus hung up and sat very still. HR will be present. The same words as before. But it didn't feel like before. Before he'd walked into that room and she'd defended him in front of witnesses, stake her whole name to save his. This felt like the opposite. This felt like the thing she'd warned him about in the very first elevator finally coming true, just later than either of them expected. The person who sees you at your worst, you can never look at them the same way again. I thought about Emma the whole way up. He always thought about Emma. When he walked into the 4th floor conference room, Amelia was standing at the window with her back to him, exactly like the first time in a suit. Exactly like the first time. And there was a man from HR, and the same lawyer from before, and there was a stack of documents on the table, and Marcus felt something in his chest go cold and quiet and still. "Mr. Reed," Amelia said, and turned around, and her face was the stranger's face again, the perfect blank CEO mask, and this time there was no crack in it at all. "Thank you for coming. Please sit." He sat. "I'll be direct," she said, "because you deserve that much, and because I don't trust myself to do this slowly." She picked up the first document. "Effective at the end of this month, your position on the Atlanta logistics floor is being eliminated." The room seemed to tilt. There it was. There it was, the thing he'd known was coming since he was 12 years old, and learned that good things get taken away, the thing he'd braced for his whole life. "I understand," Marcus said. His voice came out steady. "Funerals. He could do this. For the record, I want to say the rumors were never—" "I'm not finished," Amelia said. "Your position is being eliminated because I'm creating a new one, Director of National Distribution Strategy. It reports to the Chief Operations Officer, not to me. It's a promotion, a significant one with a salary that I suspect will solve your daughter's orthodontia problem, and then some. And it comes with a mandate to fix the warehouse consolidation mess that you and I have supposedly been discussing over salads for the last month." She set the document down and slid it across the table to him. "The supposedly being that the plan is real, Marcus. You built half of it in those lunches without even realizing I was writing it down. It's the best distribution strategy this company's had in a decade, and I'll be damned if I let anyone say the man who wrote it didn't earn every dollar of the job." Marcus stared at the document. He couldn't make the words on it hold still. "I don't understand," he said. "There's more." Amelia's hands were flat on the table now, and Marcus saw for the first time that they were trembling just slightly, the same tremble from the wine glass a lifetime ago. You now report to the COO, not to me. There is no reporting line between us anymore in any direction. Which means, and here her voice caught just for a second, and she pushed through it. Which means that whatever happens between the two of us outside this building is nobody's business but ours. No conflict of interest, no subordinate, no policy, nothing anyone can point to. I made sure of it. I spent 3 days with the lawyers making absolutely sure of it. The HR man and the lawyer. Marcus realized were both smiling slightly, the way people smile when they're witnessing something and they know it. Amelia, Marcus said slowly. What did this cost you? Tell me what this cost you, because a board doesn't just let a CEO restructure the whole. It cost me the acquisition, Amelia said. The words dropped into the room like a stone into still water. There was a deal, she said. A big one. 400 million. It would have made a dozen people rich, and it would have secured my legacy, and my chairman told me 3 days ago that I could have the deal, or I could have you, but not both. That a CEO who won't put away an inconvenient man for the good of the shareholders is a CEO who can't be trusted with $400 million. Her voice was shaking openly now, and she wasn't stopping. It wasn't hiding. It was letting the HR man and the lawyer and Marcus all watch her not hide it. And I sat in that chair for 2 days doing the math. Marcus running the numbers the way I always run the numbers, and every single time it came out the same. Every time. The deal is worth $400 million, and it's worth nothing, because I would go back to that empty house and that dark garage, and you would go back to a life where a good man got thrown away one more time to make rich people richer, and I have spent 20 years being exactly the kind of person who throws good men away, when it's convenient, and I am done. I told Gerald no. I told the whole board no. The deal is dead. I killed it this morning. Nobody in the room breathed. You gave up $400 million, Marcus said. He could barely get the words out. I gave up $400 million for a porch light, Amelia said, and her voice broke completely on the last word, and the perfect CEO mask shattered right there in the conference room, and she pressed her hand to her mouth. And a fox's blanket, and a little girl who thinks her rabbit likes me, and a man who made me a pancake at 6:45 in the morning and wouldn't let me pay for his kid's teeth because his pride was all he had left in the win column. She laughed through the tears, wet and helpless. It wasn't even a hard decision in the end. That's the thing. I thought it would be the hardest decision of my life, and it turned out to be the easiest. I just needed 2 days to be brave enough to admit how easy it was. Marcus was on his feet. He didn't remember standing up. There's a catch, Amelia said quickly, wiping her face, trying to laugh, trying to pull herself back together and failing. The board didn't remove me. Turns out killing a bad deal to protect an employee from being unfairly terminated is, according to the lawyers, actually exactly what a CEO is supposed to do, and Gerald was bluffing about having the votes, and when it came down to it, more of the board respected the decision than didn't. Barely. It was close. But I'm still the CEO. So this, she gestured at herself at the tears at the wreckage of the mask. You don't get to see this in the building. In the building, I'm still Amelia Carter, and you're still the Director of National Distribution Strategy, and we are two consummate professionals. But outside the building, Amelia. Outside the building, I would very much like to see where this goes if you still. Amelia, stop talking. She stopped. Marcus came around the conference table past the smiling HR man and the smiling lawyer, and he stood in front of the most powerful woman in the building, the woman who had just set $400 million on fire for a porch light, and he did the thing he'd wanted to do since 1 o'clock in the morning weeks ago, and had never once let himself do. He took her face in both his hands, and he wiped the tears off her cheeks with his thumbs, the way he did for Emma, and he said, "You beautiful, stubborn, impossible woman. You could have just called me." And then in front of HR and a lawyer and the whole city of Atlanta, 40 floors below, Marcus Reed kissed her. And Amelia Carter, self-made unbreakable, who had sat alone in a dark garage 6 months ago, hoping to disappear. Who had not been kissed like she was precious in longer than she could remember, who had thrown away a fortune because a family in a small warm house had turned out to be worth more than every dollar she'd ever chased. Amelia Carter kissed him back and held on, and finally, for the first time in 20 years, stopped doing the math. Somewhere down the hall, the news was already starting to spread a different rumor. This time, a true one. The best kind that the CEO had turned down the biggest deal in company history, and nobody knew why. But the HR man knew why, and the lawyer knew why, and neither one of them ever said a word because some things you witness and you just keep. And the two of them had just watched a woman choose a person over a payday, and in 11 years and 30 years of doing this work respectively, neither of them had ever seen it happen even once. Emma didn't find out about any of it until Saturday. And when Marcus sat her down at the kitchen table, under the Me and Daddy drawing, and tried to find the words to explain that Amelia was going to be around a lot more. Now maybe all the time his 8-year-old daughter looked at him like he was the slowest man alive. "Doe Daddy," Emma said. "She already lives here basically. She has a toothbrush." She went back to her cereal. "Can she come to my next game? I'm gonna get a hit this time. I can feel it." She got a hit at the next game. It was a slow dribbling little ground ball that rolled about 15 feet and got her thrown out at first by a mile. But Emma Reed rounded the bases in her head like she'd hit it out of the park. And when she came back to the bleachers, she found her father and Amelia both on their feet screaming like she'd won the World Series. That was the first public thing they did together, the three of them out in the open where anybody could see. And nobody from work saw, and it wouldn't have mattered if they had. Because 2 weeks after the conference room, Marcus Reed had started reporting to the chief operations officer, and there was no line left between him and Amelia Carter that anyone could point to and call wrong. But it was never that simple. Nothing worth having ever is. The board didn't forget that Amelia had killed a $400 million deal, and there were men on that board. Gerald was not the worst of them. It turned out not by a long way, who filed that decision away and waited. Waited for a quarter to come in soft. Waited for a stumble. Waited for the day they could stand up and say, "Remember when she chose a warehouse manager over the shareholders? Remember when we should have removed her and didn't?" That day came about 4 months later, and it came harder than Amelia expected. It was a Thursday. Marcus knew something was wrong the second she walked through the door of the little house that night, because she didn't take her shoes off at the door, the way she'd learned to, didn't call out for Emma, didn't do any of the small rituals that had become theirs. She just stood in the entryway under the Me and Daddy drawing and looked at him, and her face was the CEO mask, the real one, the one she almost never wore at home anymore. "They're moving to replace me," she said. Marcus set down the dish towel. "Sit down, tell me." "There's nothing to sit down about." Gerald called an emergency session. Q3 numbers came in 11% under projection, which is because we walked away from Blue Water, which everyone knew would cost us short-term, which was in the plan. But that doesn't matter, because 3 of them have wanted me gone for a year, and now they've got a number to point at. They're calling a vote, 2 weeks, to remove me as CEO. Her voice was flat controlled, and Marcus had learned that the flatter she got, the more scared she was. "They're saying my judgment is compromised. They're saying I put personal feelings ahead of the company. They're saying—" She stopped. One of them said in the meeting out loud that a woman who'd throw away $400 million for a man was exactly the kind of emotional decision-making they'd always worried about. Word for word. That's what he said. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. "Who said that?" "It doesn't matter. It matters to me." "Who said it?" "Marcus." She finally sank into a chair. Don't do the thing where you want to protect me. This isn't a rumor on the logistics floor you can kill with an HR memo. This is 14 people on a board and a vote in 2 weeks, and right now the count is against me. 7-5 with 2 undecided. I need both undecideds, and I need to flip one of the 7, and I don't know how because the whole case against me is true. I did put you ahead of the deal. That's not a lie they're telling. That's a thing I actually did. And there it was. The twist that neither of them had let themselves say out loud, in 4 months of Saturday games and Sunday pancakes, that the best thing Amelia had ever done. The choice that had given her a family was also the loaded gun her enemies had been waiting for. She'd chosen love, and now love was going to cost her the company she'd built her whole self around. And there was a version of this where she lost everything, and it was Marcus's fault, and they both knew it, and neither of them could say it. So, Marcus said the other thing. The thing he'd learned to say at a funeral, the thing that was harder and truer. "Okay," he said. "Then let's fight it." "There's no fighting it. The math. You know what I've noticed about you and math?" Marcus pulled a chair around and sat down in front of her knees, almost touching the way he sat with Emma when the world got too big. "You're the smartest person I've ever met, and every time something really matters, you run the numbers, and the numbers tell you to give up, and you almost do. The garage. The deal. Now this. You sat in a car in a parking garage once and did the math, and the math said, disappear. And you didn't. You know why you didn't?" Amelia's eyes were wet. "Why?" "Because the math leaves out the part that matters," Marcus said. "The math can't count the porch light. It can't count Emma's rabbit. It couldn't count you turning down 400 million and it turning out to be the easiest decision of your life. You keep trusting the math over the thing your gut already knows, and your gut has been right every single time it mattered, and the math has been wrong." He took her hands. "So don't ask the math whether you can win this vote. Ask yourself whether Amelia Carter, the one who slept in her car and ate ramen and got told no by 9 banks, whether that woman rolls over for a board because 7 old men don't like who she loves. What does she do, Amelia? Not the math. Her." And Amelia Carter looked at the man holding her hands, and something came up in her spine that had been missing since she'd walked in the door, and she said, "She fights. She fights. She fights dirty actually when she has to." Now you're talking. What happened over the next 2 weeks? Marcus only saw pieces of, because Amelia went to war, and she went to war the way she'd built the company by outworking every person in the room. She met with board members one by one. She rebuilt the case for walking away from Blue Water from the ground up with numbers. This time, cold hard numbers showing that Blue Water's own division had cratered 15% since the deal would have closed, that the acquisition would have saddled them with a dying asset, that her emotional decision had actually saved the company a fortune. She found the one thing the men who wanted her gone hadn't counted on, that being underestimated her entire life had made Amelia Carter the single most prepared human being any of them had ever sat across a table from. But it was the last board member that mattered. The last undecided. And Marcus would never forget the night she came home and told him who it was. "It's a woman named Patricia Hall," Amelia said. "Newest board member, joined 8 months ago. Runs a logistics firm in Charlotte, self-made tough as nails. And she's the vote I can't read because she won't take my meetings. 3 requests. All declined. Her assistant says she prefers to decide based on the record." Amelia rubbed her eyes. The record. The record says I torched a fortune for a man. If she's deciding on the record, I'm finished." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "Patricia Hall," he said. "Charlotte Logistics. That's Amelia, I know that name. I know that firm." He got up and started pacing. 6 years ago, before I came here, I did a consulting job for a distribution company that was about to go under. Little firm. The owner was a woman who'd built it herself and was about to lose it because a bigger competitor was squeezing her out of every contract. I spent 2 months restructuring her whole routing system for basically nothing because Sarah was pregnant and I was working 3 jobs and this woman couldn't afford my rate, but I liked her and I liked what she'd built. He stopped pacing. Her company didn't go under. It's still around. It got bought a few years back by a bigger firm out of Charlotte. And the owner's name... Amelia was staring at him. "No. Her name was Patricia Hall." The silence in the kitchen was total. "You saved her company," Amelia said slowly. "I helped her save her own company. She did the hard part. But yeah, she sent me a Christmas card for 3 years after. I never told her about Sarah. We lost touch." Marcus sat back down. "Amelia, I am not going to walk into a board meeting and use a favor from 6 years ago to save your job. That's not you'd never respect a thing that got won that way, and neither would I, and neither would she. That's not how any of us are built." "I'm not asking you to," Amelia said, but something had lit in her face. "But you don't have to. That's the thing. She said she'll decide on the record, so let's put it on the record. not a favor, the truth. She grabbed his hands. She's deciding whether I have good judgment, whether I can be trusted. And the entire case against me is that I chose a man over money. So let her hear about the man. Not from me, from the record. Who he is. What he did for a woman he'd never see again for basically nothing when he had a pregnant wife and 3 jobs. Let Patricia Hall find out that the man I threw away $400 million for is the same man who quietly saved her company 6 years ago and never once asked for anything back. Amelia's eyes were blazing now. Because that's not emotional decision-making, Marcus. That's the best judgment I've ever shown in my life. I chose right, and I can prove it. The board meeting was on a Tuesday. Marcus wasn't in the room. He was at home with Emma, and he'd told Amelia he wasn't going to sit by the phone, that he was going to make dinner and help with fractions and act like a normal Tuesday, because if he sat by the phone, he'd lose his mind. And he almost pulled it off. He made spaghetti. He helped Emma with fractions. And then, at 7:40 in the evening, halfway through the dishes, his phone buzzed on the counter, and Emma got to it before he did. "It's Amelia," Emma announced. "It's a picture." Marcus dried his hands and looked. It was a photo of Amelia in the boardroom, still in her chair at the head of the table, and she'd taken it herself, a slightly crooked selfie, and she was crying, but she was smiling so wide it split her whole face, and around her, the board members were still in their seats, and there was a coffee-stained legal pad in front of her, and she'd scrawled 2 words on it in huge letters and held it up next to her face for the photo. The words were still CEO, and underneath the photo, a text, 8 to 6. Patricia flipped, and she brought Gerald with her, and I don't fully understand how, but I'm not asking questions. Tell Emma her rabbit is officially the company mascot. I'm coming home. Put the kettle on. I love you both so much I can't breathe. Marcus sat down on the kitchen floor. Just sat right down on the floor with his back against the cabinets, and Emma climbed into his lap and looked at the picture and said, "Why are you crying, Daddy? She's smiling." And Marcus said, "Those are the good kind, baby. Those are the good kind," and held his daughter on the kitchen floor and cried the good kind until Amelia's key turned in the lock 40 minutes later. Patricia Hall, it came out later, had done more than flip her own vote. She'd stood up in that boardroom, the newest member, the one nobody expected to speak, and she'd told the story of a young consultant who'd saved her company for almost nothing 6 years ago when she couldn't afford to pay him and had a pregnant wife at home. And she'd looked around the table at 7 men who wanted to remove a CEO for the crime of loving that same consultant. And she'd said, according to Amelia, something that Amelia would repeat for the rest of her life. She said, Amelia told him that night, curled against his chest on the brown couch under the fox's blanket in the exact spot where all of this had started. She said, "You're telling me this woman's fatal flaw is that she recognized the value of a good man before the rest of us did. Gentlemen, that's not the reason to fire her. That's the reason to give her a raise." Amelia laughed, wet and amazed. And then Gerald of all people, Gerald started laughing, and he said, "You know what, she's got me there." And he changed his vote, and it was over. Just like that. 6 years ago, you helped a stranger you'd never see again. And tonight, she saved my whole life, and you weren't even in the room. She pressed her face into his chest. You keep doing that. You keep saving me when you're not even there. That's not what happened, Marcus said quietly, stroking her hair. You saved yourself. You did 2 weeks of the hardest work of your life. Patricia just told the truth about who you are, and the truth was on your side, because you're a good person who made a good choice. I just happened to be the choice. He kissed the top of her head. Don't give me the credit for your own courage, Amelia. You've been doing that your whole life, building things with your own 2 hands, and then convincing yourself somebody else did it. Not this time. This one was you. She was quiet for a long time. I want to marry you, she said. Marcus went still. I know it's fast, Amelia said, sitting up to look at him. And there was no CEO mask now. None. Just a woman who'd walked through fire and come out the other side. I know we've known each other less than a year. I know all the reasons it's too soon. I've run the math and I don't care about the math anymore. You taught me that. I want to marry you. I want to wake up in this house every morning for the rest of my life. I want to be there for every one of Emma's games, even though she's a terrible baseball player. She's really bad, Marcus agreed. She's genuinely so bad, and I want to see all of it. I want the porch light and the pancakes and the fractions and the fox's blanket. I don't want the mansion. I never want to sit in a dark garage again. I want you. Her voice broke. I spent 20 years believing that if I just built something big enough, I'd finally feel like I was enough. And I built the biggest thing in the room, and I still felt like nothing. And then a single dad handed me a glass of water and made me a pancake and let me sleep. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I was enough exactly as I am. Big, loud, too much, all of it. You never once wanted me to be smaller. She was crying now. Do you have any idea what that is to a woman who's been told her whole life she's too much? To find the one person who thinks you're just right. Marcus reached up and wiped her tears with his thumbs, the way he did for Emma, the way he'd done in the conference room. Amelia, he said, I have to ask you something first, and it's important, so listen. He took a breath. You understand that if you marry me, you're marrying Emma too. She comes first. She will always come first. Not because I love you less, but because that's the deal I made the night her mother died, and I'll never unmake it, not for anyone. She is the one thing in my life that's non-negotiable. Can you live with that? Being second to an 8-year-old, always. And Amelia Carter, who had spent her whole life being first at everything, and empty inside all of it, laughed through her tears and said, Marcus, being second to that little girl is the greatest honor anyone has ever offered me. I would fight the whole board again for the chance to be second to Emma. Then yes, Marcus said. God, yes, marry me, marry us. They didn't tell Emma that night. They decided to wait to do it right, to sit her down together on the weekend. But Emma, being Emma, walked into the kitchen the next morning for pancakes, took one look at the two of them and said, You're getting married, aren't you? Marcus and Amelia froze. Baby, how did you? Amelia's wearing your hoodie, and you're making the good pancakes on a Wednesday, and Wednesday isn't a pancake day, Emma said, climbing into her chair with the patience of a child explaining something obvious to slow adults. The good pancakes are for special, so it's special, so you're getting married. She reached for the syrup. Can I be the flower girl? Kayla M was a flower girl, and she got to throw petals and everyone clapped. Also, can beans come? Beans should be there. Amelia put her hand over her mouth. You want me to marry your dad? Emma looked at her like this was the strangest question she'd ever heard. You already live here, Emma said. You have a toothbrush. You come to my games even though I'm bad. You learned how to do fractions the way my teacher does them so I wouldn't get confused. You keep beans safe on your hard nights. She shrugged, pouring approximately a gallon of syrup. That's a mom. I already have a mom in heaven, and now I get one here too. Grandma says you can have more than one person love you, it doesn't run out. She finally looked up, and there was something so simple and so certain in her 8-year-old face that it stopped both adults cold. I asked God for it. On my birthday when I blew out the candles. I wish Daddy wouldn't be lonely anymore. And then you came. She went back to her pancakes. So yeah, you should marry him. God already said yes. Neither Marcus nor Amelia could speak. And that in the end was the whole story. Not the boardroom, not the $400 million, not the vote or the villain in the gray suit, or the rumor that nearly ended everything. Just an 8-year-old girl who'd blown out her birthday candles and wished her lonely father would find someone, and a lonely woman in a dark garage who'd almost given up right around the same time, and the strange, quiet, holy accident of a single night that brought them together. A night when a man chose kindness for a woman who was hurting, when nobody else in the room even noticed she was hurting at all. They got married the following spring in the backyard of the little house because Amelia refused to do it anywhere else. She'd finally sold the mansion in Buckhead. She said she'd never once slept a full night through in it, and she wasn't going to get married in a house that had never felt like home. Emma was the flower girl, and she threw the petals with such violent enthusiasm that she ran out halfway down the aisle and had to walk the rest of the way pretending to throw invisible ones, and everyone clapped anyway, and Beans the rabbit had a seat in the front row. Patricia Hall came. Danielle came. Diane from HR came and cried and told anyone who'd listen that she'd known since the very first meeting. Marcus's mother came and held Amelia's face in her hands and said, Welcome to the family, baby. It's about time. Somebody made my son laugh again." And Amelia, who had never had a mother who thought she was enough, cried so hard she nearly ruined her makeup. Amelia stayed CEO. She ran that company for another 11 years and made it bigger than it had ever been, and she did it as herself. Loud, plus-size, unapologetic, taking up exactly as much space as she pleased. And somewhere along the way, she became the person that younger women in the building pointed to and said, "That's what it looks like, that's who you can be." She never sat in a dark garage again. She never once did the math on whether she deserved to be happy. And every single day, no matter how big the meeting or how important the deal, she left at 5 o'clock. Because there was a little girl with a baseball game and a man with a pancake griddle and a porch light that stayed on for her. And Marcus. Marcus became the director of national distribution strategy and then a vice president, and he earned every inch of it, and the braces got paid for, and the roof got fixed, and none of it ever changed the fundamental fact of the man, which was that he was a person who noticed when someone was hurting. He noticed it in a woman across a crowded restaurant when nobody else did. And that one act of noticing, that one decision to walk across a room and move a wine bottle out of reach, when it would have been so much easier to look away, that was the whole thing. That was the seed the entire rest of their lives grew out of. Years later, when Emma was grown and applying to colleges to study marine biology, after all, she wrote her admissions essay about the night. She woke up thirsty at 3 in the morning and found her exhausted father asleep on the couch with a sad stranger, and how she'd covered them both with a blanket because they looked cold. She wrote that she didn't know that night that she was tucking in her future mother. She wrote that she'd learned the most important thing she knew from her dad, and it wasn't anything he ever said. It was something he did over and over her whole life. He paid attention to people. He noticed the ones who were hurting, especially the ones who were good at hiding it. And he was kind to them, even when it cost him something, even when nobody was watching, even when it would have been so much easier not to be. She got into the college. Of course she did. And on the day she left for school, Amelia stood on the porch under the light that had started all of it, and held Marcus's hand, and watched their daughter drive away. And she said the thing she'd been saying for years, the thing that had become a kind of prayer between them. "You saved me," Amelia said. "You know that. That whole first night. You saved my life, and you didn't even know you were doing it." And Marcus Reed, single father, kissed his wife on the porch of the small warm house that a broken CEO had once chosen over a mansion, and gave her the answer he always gave, the truest thing he knew, the thing that was the whole point of everything. "No, Amelia," he said. "You had it backwards from the start. I didn't save the woman who looked helpless. You were never the helpless one." He pulled her close. Sometimes the person who needs saving the most is the one everybody's convinced already has it all. I just happened to be the one who noticed, and noticing you was the best thing I ever did. She was never alone again. Not for one single night for the rest of her life. And that is where the story ends. Not with the money, not with the title, not with the deal or the vote or the villain, but with a porch light left on a family that chose each other, and a woman who finally understood that she had always from the very beginning